Okay, we need to talk about AI. Also, welcome to Brush Fogs. Okay, so if you guys don't know, my name is Gordon. I'm currently a 3D artist in the gaming industry and have been working there for several years, but also have been actively involved in the art community of games and movies and stuff like that since maybe 2015, something like that. I say involved, I've only been working for a couple of years, and even at that, it's been on mostly indie games and smaller projects. But I have, many people I know I would call friends or, acquaintances in the industry who are extremely high tier. There are other art directors or leads at huge studios in LA or Los Angeles in America, California, most places on the West Coast, or of course some places in New York also in the East. So yeah, I've had conversations with these guys for several years, and the biggest thing to come out of this whole argument has kind of happened over the last week or 2 weeks. And, I feel like I have probably kept my tongue on this in terms of making a video. I've been really vocal online, speaking to people in things like Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, but I haven't really come out officially and talked about this. And I'm using this platform to talk about it outside of the Artcast, where I feel like the video could have existed on either channel, but I might even post it like a dual thing where I might put it on like both channels and you guys can talk about it inherently. A couple of things have happened in recent succession where I feel like I need to start talking about it publicly because it is starting to really get to me. And also I feel like although my voice carries very little weight in this argument, I do just want to express myself as an individual and talk about what I've been feeling for the past, what it feels like forever, So 2 big things happened, maybe 3 big things happened in short succession over the last couple of weeks. The first thing that happened, I think happened less than 24 hours ago now. The CEO of ProCreate, or specifically Savage, which is the company who makes ProCreate, came out on socials and said,
I really fucking hate AI.
He would like his people to know who use the app that it will never be used for AI. They won't be taking any training data from things that we make, and also they will not be implementing any generative AI into their products.
I don't like what's happening in the industry, and I don't like what it's doing to artists. We're not going to be introducing any generative AI into our products. Our products are always designed and developed with the idea that a human will be creating something. We don't exactly know where this story is going to go or how it ends, but we believe that we're on the right path supporting human creativity.
Now, the great thing I love about Savage is the fact that it's a small wholesome team. I have met many members of that team. For people who don't know, Digital Artcast back in 2017, or was it 2018? I think it was 2017, was sponsored by ProCreate. We had them as an official sponsor for about a year, and the intro to my shows used to be, welcome to Digital Artcast sponsored by ProCreate. Savage and ProCreate have had a place in my heart for a very long time. Not only do I use the app daily, but they have at this point, became a massive contender for things like Photoshop and Illustrator and other bits and pieces. And, of course, last year they announced their animation software Dreams, which will now, of course, be at the forefront of most animators' palettes as well, because to an extent people were, using ProCreate to animate in a sense, but it was never really built for that. And now that they have made this new piece of software, then it's kind of taken over, and I feel like they have so much more potential. I know Ian McHugh, who is a Scottish artist and content creator of like paintings and drawings for films and games. He's been one of the biggest influences in my art, and I think most people's art for a long time. But he actually publicly asked Savage, I think specifically ProCreate, would they ever make a desktop version? Where is the desktop version? Because I think a lot of people are ready for them to have like that realm of, we can now topple Adobe's Photoshop. Like, we feel like we're in a position where if we make a desktop version, we can topple them. And I think it was the CEO who actually directly responded and said, 100%, it might be coming soon, basically, is what they kind of said is the gist. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but more or less the hint was dropped that they're probably going to be making a desktop version at one point. So that happened. So he came out, James came out and talked about him hating AI and that they wouldn't implement it into ProCreate things. And the same week, the lawsuit that was pending by Karla Ortiz. Shout out Karla, who's been a guest on my show also. She basically kind of also, publicly stated that this is happening, that the lawsuit that they launched against companies like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney is now kind of going forward. Basically, they were claiming, obviously, the very obvious thing, that the training data that was used to train these models was based on other people's works, specifically her work and many other people's work, and because of that, they were due damages. Basically, they were due damages, and also I think the whole part of the lawsuit was that they wanted them to kind of take down or destroy the data set. So, that has now pushed forward, because for the longest time, I think it was kind of claiming that Karla couldn't sue Midjourney or Stable Diffusion because it wasn't copyright infringement. But now I think that ruling has changed, so now the court case is essentially going ahead, which is great. It is striking a blow for us as artists. I wouldn't really be affected by it because my work is not in the list of the 4,000 plus artists that's data has been scraped. If you don't know, there's a list online where basically it was leaked, the names of people that the data set used to train its generative AI. And at this point, it was leaked in a public Discord. It was leaked in a Discord that Midjourney used. One of their devs leaked the document about, here's the names we're using to train the data set of artists in the world, which included people like Karla Ortiz. So yeah, shout out to Karla for pushing forward with that. Also with Steven Zapata and Randy and many other people, John Lamb, guys who have fought the good fight for the longest time, have really pushed at every inch and mile they could to make people see that this data was stolen from us and it is being unjustly used, and we deserve compensation, we deserve recognition, especially with this week also. I think something like 7,000 people gathered outside Los Angeles, outside one of the studios, to protest, to stand out with animation on the AI conditions that are now coming under in some studios, where some people are being forced to use AI in their work or hire people who use AI, and the Animation Guild is not happy with it. So they have joined with the writers and some voice actors to basically walk out and protest against the AI conditions that are being forced upon them. The whole industry for the last couple of years has felt like a practical joke, with the layoffs, with AI, with the court case, with, it's absolutely destroyed my creativity. And, I was lucky in a sense where I was working for most of that, but watching my friends and people I knew, relatively well, not hundreds of people, but maybe a handful, like 10, 20 people I knew fairly well and had talked to for many years, post on their Facebook or their LinkedIn that they had lost work. Look, it's hit home as well. Locally here in Scotland, we have Axis Studios, and Axis have for the longest time put out, a very high quality and standard of work. They were a huge beacon or bastion in the VFX community, and they shut down, I think, something like a month ago now, a couple of weeks ago. The industry is scary. It's really difficult right now to not only find work but keep it, and that is the nature of the beast. But a couple of things that are happening also recently have kind of shifted that tide. Recently, I think 500 odd workers in Blizzard have unionized, I think specifically the Warcraft team, but also places like Bethesda have also unionized as well. I think there's a bunch of other studios that are trying to follow suit. So I feel like the tide is shifting. I feel like the tide is turning. It's getting to a point where we might kind of recover from this and not go back to where we were, pre-layoffs. A lot of it has been a hangover from COVID and the conditions that were set there, but also just a lot of poor management decisions. Stuff like, especially with companies like Bungie, who just recently faced layoffs, and there was a lot of stories going about their CEO and the fact that I think when they were bought by Sony, he bought $2.5 million worth of classical cars, which, if you own the company, whatever, but at the same time, pay people a wage. That $2.5 million could have saved so many jobs. It's like Bobby Kotick, when he left Blizzard, I think he got something like a $97 million golden parachute, which is the term for a payout when he leaves, basically. Money again that could have been used to save people's jobs. And I have a lot of people I know at Blizzard, and especially when I saw a lot of those guys posting that they'd lost their job, that was particularly devastating. Again, because I love the company and I would love to work for them one day, but it was heartbreaking to see a lot of people I knew. One person specifically who is a great friend, who legitimately we would both call each other really close friends. His partner was laid off during the Blizzard layoffs. I don't know if I can really talk to the details of what happened, but definitely it was a thing where they went to work one day and then they couldn't get into their computer, and then they were kind of told via email that you've been let go. So it's one of these things where these impacts, these industry-wide layoffs do sometimes kind of cut to the core, because sometimes it's just a name on a screen or something on LinkedIn that you added a couple of months ago they don't really talk to. But a lot of people have been laid off in the last year just because there's been so many of them. Have been people I know and have spoke to intimately, have been guests on the podcast, and have been people I've spoke to since 2015, 2014. I've 10 years of talking to people, and genuinely sad to see the fact they were posting up, I've lost my job, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. Somebody, again, that it's not a thing where I didn't know this person intimately, but knew them, had spoke to them multiple times, had many conversations with them. They unfortunately lost their battle with the depression, and they are no longer here. And that is the reality of part of the industry, where some people cannot see any other way out of the situation other than to not be here anymore, which is extremely sad. You're losing these people to the world because of these circumstances that are not their fault. There's nothing they can do about them. There's nothing they can do to change the situation. They are presented with this is the reality, and it really is god awful. A lot of that was personal to talk about. A lot of that was something that had been built up for a while. I haven't really talked about how it has affected me, and how it has affected me is minimal. Look, I was again lucky to have work, to have money, to have support with my partner. A lot of people lost their jobs. They didn't have anybody to turn to. So it was sad to see, but I definitely didn't have to go through anything close to what people had to go through, where they had to basically uproot their entire life and move away again. I know I was speaking to some people in my Discord server. So I run a Discord server for people who were affected by the layoffs. There's about 1,700 people in there. And I was having a conversation with someone one night who literally had moved country 3 months prior to go work at one of these companies, and then had been laid off. So now it was well, I have to get a job, or I'm basically going home. I'm basically going back to my country, and there's nothing I can do unless I get a job in the next 3 months. That's the reality some people were faced with. And look, I haven't had to go through anything like that, so I cannot comment on how hard it's been for people. It's obviously been horrific for some people, and that is terrible. That makes it even more potent, because so I'm giving a whole pretext here of how AI has affected not only the people I know but me, and the wider industry. So for all that to happen, and to see that happening daily, monthly, weekly, every other day I was opening LinkedIn or Facebook, someone had lost their job to a layoff, or someone had had to start using AI in their job and they hated it. Stories every single day there was something you were reading online about how AI was going to take people's jobs. And obviously the amount of tech bros who had crawled from NFTs, who had crawled from crypto, who had crawled into AI, who were harassing people I knew and sending them horrible death threats online. It just never ended, and it felt like it was just going on forever and ever, until I think people just had enough and they started fighting back, and quite rightly so. So all that context of this so far, I think 10+ minute video, made me even more depressed to see what I saw, which was, I don't know if I want to specifically name people, but look, there have been specific content creators in this space who have actively talked about AI as a tool. It's here to stay. There's nothing we can do to change it, so we might as well go on with it. Hearing that from people you look up to, hearing that from people that you consider part of this community, is difficult, to say the least. It was quite infuriating. Now, I don't hold a grudge to people. I don't want anybody to be attacked, and I don't want anybody to be talked down to or made fun of, or hunted online because of their comments. And the people who have talked about it have been quite vocal, either pre or post conversation about AI, and I don't think it's my place to really get involved in that conversation, but it was extremely disappointing, you know, to analyze everything I've just talked about, that whole thing for 2+ years, and then see people be like, you know, AI is here. It felt tone deaf. It felt soulless. It felt like, you know, why would you even go there? Like, you know, why would you even, especially in the midst of like, it's still a thing that's ongoing and people are dealing with it at the moment. Why would you go to that length to be like, oh, you know, it's not that bad? Like, you know, genuinely, like a lot of juniors I know, because I'm in the boat of juniors, so like, you know, I'm talking to people at my level who are like, what's the fucking point? Like, what is the point of making art anymore? And that made me even more sad, is when people just like, you know, you just see the light die in their eyes, and it's depressing to think about, you know, the things they're going through at the moment. About at one point, you know, because like a couple of years ago it was very viable to say to people, oh, you want to be an artist, in the games or film industry, you know, it's going to be a lot of hard work. Look, it's not going to be easy, it's going to be really difficult, but it's not impossible. You know, it is a career you could have. It is something you could do with your time. You could be a games or film artist. Like, that is a possible job for you, not even just for artists, but like for producers, for programmers, loads of different jobs. You know, like people were genuinely like, I want to go work in the games industry, or work in the film industry. Like it was a job you could go have. And then, you know, AI rolls in and people are starting to think like, oh, what the fuck, is it even possible anymore? Like, can I still have a career in games or movies? And for the longest time, veterans were saying to people, I don't know. I honestly don't know, like, if I can answer that question. Now, of course, people have came out after the fact and said, you know, it can be a possibility still, and AI isn't as scary as you think it is, and it's not going to take your job. A part of that also was my complaint. You know, I was saying to people, it took people long enough, it took, especially seniors, it took them long enough to come out and speak to people and say, you know, no, it's not going to take your jobs, it's going to be totally fine. Feng Zhu, who came out and talked about in his video why AI won't take your job, you know, I mean, he obviously was maybe just waiting for a time where he understood the technology more and was speaking it cohesively, but genuinely I felt like most seniors were taking their sweet ass time trying to come online and talk to juniors and be like, look guys, keep applying, keep making art, we still want you in our industry. It was so depressing to see so many juniors be like, I'm going to give up, I'm going to leave, I'm going to just get a regular job. And I'm like, look, if a regular job is what you need to get through this, then by all means, like, you know, don't, you know, put yourself in a position where you're going to be broke or not being able to like buy food or pay your rent. If you need to have a job to get by, do it. Look, I delivered pizzas for so many years just to pay to get through school, you know, to keep my flat at the time, my apartment, you know, like, you do what you need to do to survive in this world. But it is genuinely just like tragic to see people just not kill their dream, but to see their dream die. You know, it's not that they don't want to be in the industry, it's that a barrier has now come up, as if there wasn't enough barriers already to entry in this industry. You know, another barrier came up, and you know, it's difficult when you see people talk about it like that. You know, when you see seniors being like, oh, you know, back in my day it was easy, and back in my day I got into this job and I worked really hard. Dude, have you seen PlayStation 1 graphics? Like, I get there would have been some technological thing that was hard to learn at the time, and even back then 3D was new, and like, look, you know, I'm not saying people didn't work hard to get into their job, but it has got to a point now with like the photorealistic graphics we have that it is even more like the hardest it has ever been to get into this industry is now. Like, as the technology evolves, as the industry enters more and businesses become more corporations, yeah, it gets really, 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 really hard to become a working artist in this industry, because the barrier of entry, the skill you have to prove right out of the gate before you even get to sit in the same room as people is like so high. Like, most people are like, I'm never going to do it, never going to happen. And you know, I was one of those people for the longest time until I got work, until somebody hired me. But like, I understand why students are pissed, why they're really upset. And like I say, having people come out who were influencers and big names in the industry and say things like, it's just a tool, get over it, that was heartbreaking. It was really, really difficult to watch. And you know, since then some people have changed their views, But my stance has always been for the longest time that AI is poisonous. It is a poison. And, go back and look at some of my early interviews with people in the past, like a year, 2 years ago. And I was like, it's a fucking plight in the industry. It shouldn't be here. It doesn't belong in our industry. We shouldn't. And, people have this conversation with me about, like I'm a Luddite. Like I hate technology and I hate progression. And I remember someone actually posted in one of my posts, oh yeah, we're just going to go back to horse and cart, right? Just give up your car. I don't want to give up my car. Dude, I'm fat as fuck. You think I'm going to walk anywhere? Yeah, like, seriously, man. Like, I didn't understand at any point why they thought I was, like, so against technology. Like, I am surrounded by thousands of pounds worth of camera gear, sound equipment, computers, monitors, iPads. Like, I love technology. For better or worse, it has, made my life incredible. Like, sure, it's made me a bit of a shut-in because I'm stuck in here all the time making videos or making content, but like I genuinely love the innovations we have taken over the last like 10 plus years, especially something like an iPad, like the fact that I can pick up a tablet and draw and paint in it, and make professional level work and ship it to someone via email all on one device is incredible. I absolutely love technology, and I think that it has helped humanity kind of move forward, and the fact that we're so socially aware and so socially conscious of what is going on in the world with like news and 24/7 news cycles, with like things on Instagram and Twitter. But again, there's the balance, right? We don't want to go too far to one side where like technology is replacing us, is making us obsolete. Like, it should serve us in the sense that like it should help enrich our lives and make them better, not take away fundamentally the thing that makes us human, which is art, which is expression of oneself. It really just makes me sad when people have this argument about it's the technology that's going to make the world better. Like, in what world would AI generative art, the shit that Midjourney spits out, where would that like improve us? The problem is, as well, is because of the data sets, because nothing new has been fed into it. It's like the snake eating its own tail, the self-devouring snake. It just recycles and recycles and recycles, and it's got to a point now it's just spitting out absolute dog shit. And people are like, oh, well, of course it can't make anything new and amazing because it's just eating the same old crap and spitting out. It's actually then, the data sets are now actually feeding off the Gen AI stuff it's made. So it's then a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it's just becoming unrecognizable. It's not even art anymore. It's not any expression. It's just noise. It's numbers. I just kind of hate that about art, generative AI art specifically. But yeah, just, one of the things, and this is like the biggest thing for me, right? This is the crux on which the argument fails is this. People talk about there's no need for human artists. There's no need for human art expression. We should make everything online, generative. Who cares? Who gives a shit? Fuck artists. That was the original statement. Two parts to this is, the first part is, I do like that the shit that has been produced is now putting a focus on real human artists, and people are genuinely being like, support human artists. We don't need this generative shit, which honestly, I didn't see coming. I honestly thought humanity was going to go the way of fuck artists, basically, right? But genuinely, there is a really small concentrated group who have been like, artists are totally right, they're totally within the realm for what they're talking about, because it's not just affecting us now, it's affecting voice actors, it's affecting real actors, it's affecting music producers. Like, the music industry has now had a huge backlash where people are talking about like they can't sample people's music, that's illegal. And the music industry thing is really going to sail the boat for us, because music industry IPs have been well established and copyright has been a thing for them for the longest time. So like, that is definitely going to be a thing that's going to like win us respect from the people, the public and artists. But the second part is, right? The second part is fuck artists, right? And people talk about fuck artists. So they're talking about fuck painters, writers, voice actors, actors, mimes, who knows? But they're talking about artists in general, people who create things, right? So let's break that down. Fuck them, because who needs them? During this thing called the pandemic, which happened only a couple of years ago at this point, it's hard to think it was 4 years ago. It feels like it was yesterday, honest to God. During a time where you couldn't leave your house, what did people recluse to? What did they go back to? What was the one thing people relied on during the pandemic? TV shows, music, video games, movies, books. Like, everything that is created by an artist, by a writer, by a producer, by an actor, that was the stuff you consumed when the chips were low, when the world was on its knees and everybody couldn't go outside and they were stuck inside and they didn't have any outlet or any way to, entertain themselves or any way to pass the days. The thing that they relied on was the thing that we created daily. People played video games, they watched movies on Netflix, they watched movies on, HBO, or they watched on Amazon Prime. They played games on Xbox, on PlayStation and Nintendo. They read books by various authors, they read audiobooks, they listened to audiobooks, but genuinely, people at their lowest point needed artists. It was an outlet, it was an escape from the world, because that is partly what art is for us. For a lot of people, it's turning trauma into a visual expression, basically. When people go through a divorce, when they go through a breakup, when someone dies in their life, they write a poem, they write a novel, they paint a picture. There's a really great documentary on Jim Carrey, the actor, comedian, who was painting for the longest time. He's been painting for forever, but the documentary, I think, came out, post-pandemic, and it was all about his need for colour, his need for painting in his life, and a lot of that was therapy for him when he was going through one of his divorces. I think at one point he also lost someone in his life, and it's one of these things that people just don't understand, how art is like a healing remedy for the human soul. Ethan Hawke talked about it during a TED Talk, where he expressed about, do we need poetry? Do we need songs? Do we need, paintings on the wall? Do we need anything beautiful in our lives? And he's like, people don't think about Allen Ginsberg.
You have to ask yourself, do you think human creativity matters? Well, most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about poetry, right? They have a life to live, and they're not really that concerned with Allen Ginsberg's poems or anybody's poems until their father dies. They go to a funeral, you lose a child, somebody breaks your heart, they don't love you anymore. And all of a sudden, you're desperate for making sense out of this life. And has anybody ever felt this bad before? How did they come out of this cloud? Or the inverse, something great. You meet somebody and your heart explodes. You love them so much you can't even see straight. You're dizzy. Did anybody feel like this before? What is happening to me? And that's when art's not a luxury, it's actually sustenance.
Art in general has always been a self-expression for me. It's been a way that I have, connected to the world when I couldn't connect to the world, when I would recluse and hide them inside myself. Art was something I used to escape mostly, but generally just find a voice for myself in the creative chaos that was the world. And this is kind of why AI has really struck a chord with me, and why I think I hate it so much, is that it feels like technology is taking away my ability to express myself. That's probably something I haven't thought about a lot, but it's quite close to what I'm probably feeling, is that, I feel like the part of me that can heal itself through art has kind of been attacked, and, is now facing a future where I'm going to have to find some other outlet. And it's difficult because I've already had to give up so many of my hobbies to pursue this career, and it feels like every time I create a new hobby or a new form of expression, I have to think about how I'm going to monetize it. It's difficult. It really is. It's one of these things that I feel like, where does it end? When will the world stop taking things from us? Yeah, and this is where I kind of plead with people to look on, the side of, look at what you're doing to people who make art. The people who literally, bleed and sweat to make the things that make you happy. People who kill themselves to make, shows like The Mandalorian, or shows like The Sopranos or Game of Thrones. So much effort has gone into those things, every minute. If you ever want to be just odd and what goes into making things, movies, games, but generally, if you watch something like The Making of The Hobbit, because Peter Jackson has been really great about documenting the making of those films and really going into explicit detail about everything they go through to make those films, what they are. Say what you want about The Hobbit compared to The Lord of the Rings, fucking get it, whatever, right? But just watch the making ofs. You can watch most of them through YouTube for free. But if you ever get the Blu-ray editions of The Hobbit or stuff like that, there's like 4.5 hours worth of behind the scenes content, and it's ridiculous. It really is. The making of Star Wars, the episode 1 is on YouTube, I think, for free. Incredible. The Double Fine documentary, where they talk about making Psychonauts recently, like the Psychodyssey, I think it's called. But even before then, like the making of Broken Age, that studio also has been just documenting like every part of the creative process in making those games. Like, just watch one of those episodes, just one out of all of those fucking things I just mentioned. Just watch one thing, and you will see the effort that goes into being a creative. Like, people like impart parts of their soul to make things that you love, to make things that make you happy. You know, people have this thing about like, you know, I think, you know, game developers deserve this, they deserve that, like, oh, they're all, you know, I'm not surprised the studio closed, their game was fucking shit. People do not, like, nobody I have ever met in my life has walked into a job at a studio thinking, I'm going to make the fucking shittest thing I possibly can. Even on games that were badly received, or games that were genuinely just like, you know, passed over, everybody I know on that team that worked on it gave everything they could. They gave 100% on every single thing they did, because they loved what they do and they wanted to make it better. You know, I have people I know, I've interviewed some of them on the podcast, who worked on Halo Infinite, right? This is just an example, but they worked at 343 Industries, they worked on Halo Infinite before it shipped. You know, they were setting out to make the best game they could. Every single person in that department, I was told, was at the top of their game, and they wanted to make the best game they could ever make. They were making the best Halo they had ever envisioned. This was the game to end all games. This is what they wanted to make. Everybody from the environment department to the character department to the cinematics to sound, all wanted to make the best game they possibly could. No one walked into that studio and was wanting to make a shit game. It just was not on the agenda. Like, people don't understand the blood, sweat and tears that goes into making these products. And even like stuff like episode 1, I mean, if you go back and you look at like Lucas's whole legacy of Star Wars, and how even at the end of that documentary on episode 1, he was like, I felt like I've gone too far. Like, I felt like even for me, this is too much. He was more worried about the fan reception than his own creative vision. That's what this industry does to you, is it makes you second guess everything you do, because you're always at the behest of the consumer, you know. And it's difficult because, you know, 99.9% of people who play games or watch movies are just regular Joes in a regular job who just want to be entertained for half an hour, whatever, and they genuinely love things. They genuinely just, you know, consume it and then let it go. But there are the 0.01% of people who, you know, post videos online about how fucking terrible this game is and how the studio ruined the franchise, and this particular artist or director is a fucking heathen or devil because, you know, they came into the studio with the agenda they were going to ruin the franchise. I know, I've spoke to people, and, you know, like, just, you know, even the fact that there's a whole movement in video games right now. Oh god, this could be its own video. This whole movement in video games right now, where people are talking about the woke agenda and how, you know, gayness comes into games, and how, you know, the gays have an agenda because, you know, they want people to be like them. And first of all, just an absolute fucking moronic thing of thinking that everything is made for you. It's like, you know, when people look at some of these games, I'm trying to think what this game is out recently. Like, the game is beautiful, it looks really incredible, the characters are very diverse, they're very beautifully designed, but they don't look like your traditional muscle-bound warriors. You know, like, I love the small indie games, stuff like Stray, or any other game of that, you know, like Pyre, Bastion, Hades, you know, companies like Supergiant and stuff like that, who make small indie games, who make really beautiful creative stuff. But I also, like, I'm looking forward to Space Marine. Like, I'm really, really excited about playing the new Space Marine game. You know, the Warhammer series in general, like, is fun. I love that series. You know, you can have both things can exist in a world. And the fact that people are now having this whole thing about, like, games have gone woke, you just have to imagine sometimes, like, these games aren't made for you. They're not made for everybody. They're made for a specific target audience, and you're not part of that audience. The thing I had to come to in terms of, like, just a realization when I turned like 35 is that nothing in pop culture is no longer made for me. Like, you know, there's a point where, like, pop culture will pass you by. Like, you're not cool anymore, you're not hip, you're not in with the kids, you know, like you get to a point in your life where like pop culture isn't made for you anymore. Like movies aren't targeted for you, games aren't targeted for you, advertising, you know, TV shows, like they're made for a different generation and you're not part of that anymore. That's hard for some people to think, to really let go of, is that the thing that is the biggest nostalgia in their life and has probably got them through a lot, like don't get me wrong, games for a lot of people is healing and has probably got them through a lot of difficult times in their life. And to then be like, well, it's not made for you anymore, it can be a difficult pill to swallow. And that's what's difficult for us as gamers who then become artists or devs in the industry, is that you have to learn that you're on a creative journey to serve someone else, to serve another person's creative vision, and then ultimately make a game that maybe isn't targeted for you. I mean, the perfect kind of coalition of the two coming together is that you get to work on a project that you really love, on a franchise that you really love. You know, if I got to work on something like Warcraft or Starcraft or Overwatch, you know, sure, then I love those games, you know, I would be thrilled to work on them. But most of the games I've worked on, it's been in situations where, you know, I've loved the project, I've loved the people, but it's maybe not a particular game I would play, but then it's like, it's work, right? So, but this is the thing that people don't understand, is that we really give up years of our life. And, you know, God, I remember when I entered this industry, people were talking about, you know, sleeping under their desks and not going home to see their wife and kids. You know, there was a whole thing in the 90s in Edinburgh where Rockstar North is located, because Rockstar North in Edinburgh is where Grand Theft Auto was born. Technically, it was born in Dundee, Scotland, but it moved to Edinburgh at one point. There was a point where the wives of the people who worked on Grand Theft Auto gathered outside the studio and picketed the studio because they wanted their husbands to come home. Like, the amount of sacrifice that people put into making video games, to then be told the game's shit, or it's woke, or it's terrible, or, you know, 5 out of 10. Like, people just, you know, I'm not surprised with the amount of people who are leaving the industry, and especially with AI now, like even more so. And the problem is when people like that at senior levels leave the industry through layoffs or AI or anything, you lose that talent forever. People who worked on some of the biggest and best games in the world who leave the industry because they're just sick of it, you'll never get them back. You'll never see those people again. And that's what's difficult. When you lose that talent pool, you know, you can never regrow that. You can never get it back instantly. It takes, you know, it could take another 10 years for someone to get to that position where they've worked on a bunch of titles and they know what they're doing. And then everybody who leaves, yeah, that talent is lost forever. So, you know, if anything you take away from this talk, just be it this one thing. Please, please, please try to appreciate the people who make your entertainment more. Understand that people who make your TV shows, who make your video games, who write your books, who voice your favorite game characters in the games, who act in the TV series, you know, like the Fallout TV series, those people are artists, are creators, and they want to give part of their self to you. They want to make the best thing they can and give it to you as a gift. So please just appreciate people just a little bit more empathy in the world, and it would just be a nicer place to live. Because right now the world is like on fire and I'm kind of sick of it. That's all I have to say. It took me 42 minutes at the time of recording to say all of this. It won't be a 42-minute video, but like, it's just something I'm passionate about, because I have been friends with these people, I have shared drinks with these people, I've sat next to them at events and ate food and talked and laughed and giggled and joked. These are real people in the world with real families, with real hopes and dreams, with real aspirations to be the best person they can be for the consumer, to make great games, to make great content and great films. And every time you say fuck artists and support AI, you are killing part of them. And I just don't want that to happen anymore. Okay guys, bye.